you knew very well that you were never going to come up with any monetary policy statement that would really be followed to the letter by the players, because there was the political element to it, which was to undermine the economy in a manner that would cause a regime change. Yeah, which is why I say it was a casino economy which was predominantly driven by politics as opposed to economics. So the characteristics of a casino economy is unbridled indiscipline,
greed,
corruption, which knows no bounds, and basically a political system that is looking after itself predominantly, and of course external forces, exogenous forces such as sanctions.
You know,
I had a situation, I'll give you an example, a situation where there is no forex. We were an economy and are still an economy relying mainly on imports, with no lines of credit from anyone in the world, but we had a people that needed to live. Right. So what do? You cannot commit genocide by just folding your hands and say, well, there is nothing I can do. Yeah. Basically, I'm a thinker outside the box.
Do you think that, before I go on there, I think this is important because you capture this so well.
Okay.
And I just want to read this. This is where you're looking at, you're saying, inherited then in December 2003.
Yes.
Was characterized by a plethora of very serious policy challenges, notably the following. And why I read this is because it's exactly what we're facing today. Okay. So this is 2003. Hyperinflation,
right.
Shortage of foreign currency for critical imports, interest rate and exchange rate distortions, high unemployment levels, declining levels of local and foreign investment, deindustrialization and negative economic growth, high levels of corruption, prevalence of prevalent levels of greed, speculative behavior, including falsification of accounting records, lack of unity of purpose among Zimbabweans, high levels of suspicion and mistrust among Zimbabweans in general, illegal economic sanctions, drying up of lines of credit, malfunctioning parastatals and local authorities. This is what we're dealing with,
Exactly.
Gigi, now.
Exactly.
10 years, what is it? This is 2003.
This is 2003.
This is 17 years afterwards.
This is it. That's what I inherited.
Are we ever going to get out of this casino economy?
We can, if we cure the elephant in the room, in the form of the legislative instruments. Yeah. I'm more for building strong institutions which are not dependent on individuals. It became like Gono's Reserve Bank. Why? Because I had so much room to maneuver.
You were powerful, Gigi. Let's not.
Oh,
you were powerful.
Wow! I wish I had known.
Right.
Right. So, one of the effects of a plethora of those is that we need to cure them not through policies,
statutory instruments.
Exactly. That's what I was
talking about. On a daily basis.
On a daily, you cannot. The day you are going to create a nation or an economy that is run on statutory instruments, know that there's something very wrong. Yeah.
Anyway, let's go.
There was another type of inflation that I needed to I had to deal with.
Yeah.
You see, since Adam Smith wrote his book, The Wealth of Nations, in 1776, there is never, and updated by several other economists of note, Friedman, and many along the lines, there is one thing they've missed. Yeah. And this aspect needs to be taken into account because I experienced it. What is it? What is inflation? Inflation is defined as the general rise or increase in prices over a given period. Today, bread is $10. Tomorrow, it is 20. Therefore, it has increased by 10, and therefore, it's in inflation, 100%. And we look at it and frown, right? And we judge our economic managers according to the level of inflation or hyperinflation. There's a more deadly inflation. That is inflation in the form of dead bodies. What is the price increase? What is monetary inflation? Monetary inflation is that increase, right? Yesterday and today, right? And the price of that is the erosion in the buying power of citizens, of individuals. That is the price of inflation. What is the price of life? The price of life is death or dead bodies. Now, to the extent that you can measure and say 100% because yesterday it was 10, today is 20. I was faced with a situation where if I had done nothing about it, I would have had zero monetary inflation, but the result of that would have been today 10 people die in Mzarabani or Bugera, tomorrow 20, the next day 30, the next day 40. What sort of inflation in terms of dead bodies is that? They missed that point. At the end of the day, when put against a hard surface and a rock, a thinker outside the box must choose which type of inflation you would rather live with. You will not receive kudos for having zero inflation or 5% inflation in monetary terms. But you've got people who are dying every day. I had to prevent that. I had to do whatever needed to be done in order to save lives. One of which, it's the same thing which the current government in the Second Republic is preaching. To say, you know what? We must save lives. To hell with inflation. To hell with telling us not to print money because we've got lives to save there in the form of trying to prevent COVID-19.
I hear you.
Therefore, that type of inflation needs to begin having a chapter in economic textbooks. What do you do
with that
kind of a situation?
Wow. As you're talking, I'm reflecting on the state of our hospitals right now.
Exactly.
The state of schools. When we're talking of life, the state of dreams that have been broken and blown apart.
Exactly.
The pain of people being in the diaspora, not because they want to be, but
No.
anyway, that's a painful subject for another day. Let me move on to a role that something that you are accused of, which is that, during your tenure,
Right.
a number of black banks went under.
Correct.
And that, did you not overreact to this financial indiscipline within the financial sector? Could things been done differently to stop the indiscipline and preserve the black banks that had emerged? What's your response to that?
We never looked at the actions we took in terms of the color of the owner of the institutions. No. Color, the background of individuals never came in. The role of the Reserve Bank was not to be a crash, to babysit and nurture people. We were dealing with depositors' funds. You needed to have schooled yourself in terms of how to look after them than to want to then learn. However, there were 9 steps that one would take before deciding to close the bank. And very few people knew about that. First, you send the inspectors. They look and they get explanations from management. Then the next thing, and then you send auditors, then you take the reports, you take them to Ministry of Finance, the Minister of Finance and his team look at them, then it goes to the President. The President would have the final say to say, okay, fine. Can you imagine a bank being closed without the President knowing, or Minister of Finance knowing, or your board not knowing? No, it wouldn't happen, because you are not an independent central bank. So it was collective responsibility on the part of the entire government to say, yes, they've gone overboard, take this action. There are a lot of others who were saved, who actually could have gone under. With hindsight, I wouldn't say that we overreacted, because the one thing that has happened is there's been a one-sided accusation. If today I was to tell you the extent of indiscipline that some of the guys who are running around and making those accusations, what they did, people would lynch at them.
Well, I don't know.
So,
I think to your I mean, I was shocked. I've read this book, but you read a book twice, 3 times, and you miss certain things.
Yes.
And the indiscipline that you outline here is shocking. People should have been in prison.
That is one of the legal aspects we are advocating for in the new Reserve Bank Act. People must go to jail for abusing depositors' funds. There are people who are in Zimbabwe right now who siphoned money which went to the DRC, which went to Botswana, which went to Switzerland, which went to... And when we tried to follow it up, South Africa and so forth, when we tried to follow it up, it was Gono is after me, either on account of the fact that on ethnic basis, or on account of we grew up together and therefore it's, or we had a run-in with girlfriends or something. Nothing.
So you,
could be
in your
further from the
conscience,
truth.
you are absolutely have a clear conscience. You sleep well. You did the right thing as far as...
I did the right thing. In fact, if you were to get a governor who would have been more compassionate than me, I'll give you the world. Yeah.
Let's go to a place where a part of you that people don't know, which is that in many respects you've been a bridge builder and a peacemaker, and people don't know this. And I'll walk through this, and if you could just briefly touch on the highlights of those, that you actually brokered a deal between the former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, the elders, and President Robert Mugabe, because President Robert Mugabe didn't want to hear anything about Kofi Annan. Briefly, what were the highlights of that deal?
Indeed, I'm surprised you have picked that. Very few people know that. When in November 2008, the elders wanted to come to Zimbabwe to do an investigation and so forth, they were denied to come in. No one in his right senses denies a Secretary General of the United Nations entry into your country. You just don't do that. It was not just Kofi Annan. It was Graca Machel. It was Mary Robinson. It was Jimmy Carter. It was Desmond Tutu, and others constituted as the elders who wanted.
So you came in and you...
They were denied. And as governor, I knew the impact, the negative impact of that kind of a decision, that political decision. And there was the threat then of taking Zimbabwe to the Security Council on the 22nd of December 2008. Imagine Zimbabwe being taken to the Security Council by a former UN Secretary General of the stature of Kofi Annan. What would have befallen for this country? Yeah. What happened to Libya would have happened to us much earlier. Now, I had to get in touch with KA. We were now on first name terms with KA. I invited him back, and KA said, forget it, I'm not coming. Said, okay, how about us meeting in Dubai? He says, forget it. How about in South Africa? He says, no. The manner in which you treated us is just unbelievable. And anyway, I'm preparing to go to present my case to the UN because you are now a humanitarian case. Remember, that's the time this country was having a cholera and people were dying. And yeah. I persuaded him that, okay, what are your conditions for us to meet so you don't go to the Security Council? He says, you have to come here. I said, but I am on sanctions. He says, how dare they put a governor on sanctions? Who does that? And I said, but that's the reality of it. I was put on sanctions, by the way, before I became governor. This is in 2001. Yeah.
You were still at CBZ?
I was still at CBZ. So Kofi Annan said, no, no, no. He was going to make sure that, colloquially, he was going to smuggle me out of Zimbabwe to come to Geneva. And I must go there fully empowered to enter into a pact or a discussion. I want you to bring a authority from RG. I said, fine. So, 16 December 2008 to 19th December 2008, when ZANU-PF was busy having their Bindura annual conference, I was in Geneva, negotiating with Kofi Annan. We disguised it under some foundation of sorts, negotiating and trying to understand what it is that we could do to find each other.
We had messed up, though.
We had messed up badly. Not only that, here we were also having problems to agree. That was the time when...
So you finally clinched the deal.
One of the conditions that I took there was that Kofi Annan and the elders were not to criticize RG for the next 5 years.
Wow.
And that explains why you never had KA talking bad about Zimbabwe or something. And KA then also made demands.
Which were met?
Which we were met. And part of the demands were that go and tell RG that if they don't agree to this coalition, to this GNU in South Africa and sign before the end of January, then there is going to be consequences, serious.
So that was a big one. Hey?
That was a big one. We never talked about it.
So then the next one is you also negotiate. You were in the middle of. You played an important role in getting when Morgan Tsvangirai walked out of the GNU.
Oh yes, yes.
You did backdoor channels.
Yes.
And eventually ended up with Morgan Tsvangirai and the DDC coming back.
Yes.
Briefly talk to us about that.
16 October 2009, MT, as I used to call him, walked out of government, leading his he did not walk out of parliament, but out of government, right? For a variety of reasons. I was in China at that time. I got back on the 24th of October 2009, and coincidentally, he reached out to me on a Monday. RG reached out to me on a Tuesday. Independently, after cabinet. I went to Munumtapa and he said, well, RG said, well, your homeboy decided to misbehave while you were away. And I said, by the way, he has been in touch with me, right? And said, okay, try and go see him.
Just as an aside,
yes.
When I say you were powerful, you say, really? Okay, anyway, continue.
I was a servant.
Continue.
So I said, yes, incidentally, I was coming to you also to say that he has been in touch. He is complaining about you. And you are complaining about him. So he said, okay, you do what needs to be done. So I would drive to Strathaven, usually after 8, and someone who can vouch for that is former Ambassador Makuvise, who was ambassador to Germany, because he would be called in as well. I got to the bottom of it. What is it that MT? What drove you to move out? What is it? When I was doing these negotiations, we agreed that I would speak to them as openly and not as a subordinate.
Yeah.
He gave me his 29 reasons. There were 29. Yeah. I said, okay, fine. I remember calling RG while I was there and saying, I'm here and I now have his side of the story. I'm going to put it down so that we discuss. Can we meet tomorrow? He would then say, I'm going to Vic Falls for this function, but okay, if you say we meet, I'm going to cut short and come back. And indeed, he came back. I said, I've got his side of the story. Why are you doing A, B, C, D? You are not even taking his calls. You've not given him your direct line. Okay. Well, why should I give you? He's not my friend. Okay. And so forth.
To cut a long story short,
in other words, we brokered that.
You brokered that.
And
wow.
And ahead of the SADC summit that was to take place in Maputo. So we had a situation where my brother and former boss, Tendaibit and Tim, went to advance Tim to the SADC thing with a list of grievances, hoping that MT would then present those grievances to the SADC heads of state. When MT then eventually got there, they were surprised when they gave him to say, right, these are the issues that you must give to all the other heads. He just chose 2 or 3 and left everything else.
Because they've been resolved.
Yeah. And they were surprised. One of the things that I insisted that he should put as a grievance, because he had left it out, was that it was the Gono must go. I said, oh, by the way, you've given me 28 grievances. There's a 29th one, which you have, which is Gono must go. And you say, no, it's not me. It's my guys and whatnot. Anyway, so that's the second one.
So then the other one is which is a big one. I mean, given where we're sitting right now, you were in the midst, among others, of negotiating the deal between the army generals and Robert Mugabe. That one was a tough one. I mean, give me give us a window into.
Well, let me just say it's true. Okay, the advantage I had is I enjoyed the confidence of both sides.
Okay,
and what has not been said or investigatively tried to find out is, do you realize that between Friday the 17th and until the time of his resignation, that period is a dark, it's a black box.
What happened there?
Yeah, apart from, So I got a call, yes. I had not spoken to RG for about 4 or 6 months. And on that Friday, I was about to have lunch with my family, dinner with my family. 8 o'clock, the phone comes. And he says, Wagon. I said, oh, Your Excellency. And says, okay. Murukuona zurikuitika. That yes, I've been observing from a distance what exactly is going on. Okay, he narrated, and he asked me if I could step in. I said, how could I? You have been in politics for over 60 years, long before I was even born.
He wanted you to step in.
To step in.
Explain that.
To step in and reconcile.
Yeah.
So I said, I can't. He says, well, okay, if you can't, then, well, whatever will befall us is going. He talked about about death, that had been threatened to him the next day, and death that was that had been promised to visit the former First Lady, and how it was going to be done, and so forth. His description of that moved me so much. I said, I'm in. I said, Your Excellency, if it was during the day, I would have asked for a written mandate, because I don't want misunderstandings tomorrow. But I shall ask for one thing. We are going to have to record everything until the matter is resolved. Yes. Okay, I said, but how do I get in touch with them? Said, well, you get in touch with them. I know from your interactions and with the generals and the defense forces in 2006, 2007, and later on, they still have a little bit of respect for you. I said, okay. So I got hold of Honorable Vice President Chiwenga. He was CDF at that time, around 9, and said, where are you? I'm here at KG6. And I said, fine. Clear the way. I'm coming there. I would like to meet the commandant and the generals. We must solve this thing tonight. No one is going to sleep. Okay. Which is what then happened. I got there. I was welcomed by, when I got to KG6, now Josiah Magama Tongara, I was welcomed by SB. Yeah. And first of all, okay, they were all there. And the thing to do was to establish credentials. Who am I? To you, as defense forces, as generals. If there is anyone who has got any doubt about my standing, I'm not proceeding. Who am I to RG? To RG, let me give him a call. So I called RG, put him on speakerphone, and asked him to repeat what he has said to me. And also what I had said to him, that no one was going to sleep until we found a solution that night. And that I was solo. I was not acting with anybody, and so forth. And the rest is history. We also agreed that the march was to continue, but with one request. No one was going to touch the Jura wall. No one was going to break anything. No one was going to go to the blue roof. Yeah. If that was to be the case, I promised that I would deliver the resignation. Yeah, because RG had given me a blank check. He had also authorized me to hand over.
And so you delivered.
So I delivered.
And he then wrote his resignation.
Yeah, at 9 minutes, at 13:51, we concluded. Yeah, even when there were tumultuous times and so forth between the various people, including, many, including the speaker of Speaker Mdenda, DD, and many others playing into my basket of what should we do. Yeah, and also I was then assigned to manage the universities to avoid what was to then happen. So I was in minute by minute contact with them.
Huge responsibility, Gigi.
But it was nothing compared to my other roles that I had played, which was to visit the cantonments and every barracks in this country of the defense forces, to interact with them and explain the economic situation of the country, and to just make sure that we understood each other. To be honest, some of the extraordinary situations that we found ourselves in, you would visit say a cantonment or a barracks and find that our men and the women in uniform did not have blankets. Our men and the women in uniform were sleeping on beds, wire beds that did not have mattresses. Our men and women in uniform did not have food sometimes.
So
Uniforms.
they clearly had a grievance.
They
also.
had a legitimate grievance. They did not have transport.
Did-
From those visits, I would come and print money in order to make sure that I buy blankets, supplies for our men and women, and give them dignity. The indignity of a force that is not well looked after.
The failure of a political system
Exactly.
to take care of its military, not to mention its own people.
Yeah, it's disastrous.
Talk to me.
And the police as well. There are few depots that I did not visit. I remember very well visiting Chikurubi. They did not have water. They were drinking water from spoiled sources, and I immediately
sadly-
ordered that boreholes needed to be.
Sadly, Gigi,
Yeah.
the situation hasn't changed.
I would be very surprised if it hasn't changed. If it hasn't changed, it's a serious failure on our part. We cannot allow our military, our police forces, our prisons, and the intelligence services to be in that state, because that is promotive of all forms and manner of malfunctions. in
The other intervention.
They must be looked after.
Absolutely. The other intervention is, we won't go into this, but you intervened for a peace between the First Lady and President Mnangagwa. Am I right? At the funeral.
Oh, yeah.
At the funeral.
Well, it wasn't sort of...
Maybe go into it
wasn't,
briefly.
yes. Well, let me start by saying that Shakespeare says, there is a tide in the affairs of man, which if taken at the floods can lead to good fortunes. But if omitted, will lead to misfortune for the rest of your lives. Now, the history of nations and the history of development and progress is predicated on certain historical developments and events. Nations are built around those historical moments, or they are destroyed by failure to capture those. What do I say? The demise, the unfortunate death of RG presented this nation with a tremendous opportunity to unite, to heal, to move forward this nation. And it presented an opportunity for politicians to come together. Against that background, I was fortunate to be one of the closest sawiras of RG. And I was recognized as such by the family and the chiefs and the elders in Zimba. And they asked me to play a role in getting in touch with the former First Lady to understand how we could coordinate to bring the body back home. In my interactions with the former First Lady, there was that dialogue and agreement between us that we should not antagonize anybody or hold anybody to ransom over the death of. And I said, and we said that RG was a uniter. He united people. He forgave people also. And we would want to bury the weaknesses of RG, the bad things he did actually or is accused of having done, directly or in his name. We needed to have that opportunity to say to the world, to say to ourselves, to say to nations, and to say to different political parties, guys, if at all we need to blame anybody, here is an opportunity. Let's blame every negative thing. Those of you who are in the diaspora, let's blame it on RG. Those of you who are unemployed, let's blame it on RG. Those who, whatever it is, on RG. In that regard, so the idea was that rather many people have sought to look at the negative or bad side of RG only. And to that end, I was saying, okay, let's satisfy ourselves. Let all of us pick the stone and throw the stone, the biblical stone. And let's say, and let us say, everything that you did was wrong. Everything that, including any of us who actually used his name to do certain things, let us all blame it on him. And then say to the nation, having done that, let's open a new chapter of purity of intentions, corruption-free. We itemize things that are now going to bind us and things that we're going to frown against. And simply say, right, last time we were blaming RG. Now, if we catch you doing these sort of things, it shall be serious.
Draw the line in the sand.
We have drawn the red line in the sand. Therefore, the thinking behind it was that the birth of Christ, 25th of December, is celebrated for goodwill. The birth of nations dates key events,
National events.
national events. We would have reached out and said to the international community, if you had any reason to hold back aid, investment, and so forth, if you had any reason to punish us, fine. We are saying, let's start afresh. Let's bury all the hatred. Let's bury anything negative and start afresh. Within ZANU-PF, let us unite. Whether you are G40, whether you are La Costa, whether you are what, we are one. Let's unite. Within MDC, please unite, regardless of that. Amongst ourselves as political parties, let's unite for the good of Zimbabwe. Simply as a signal of saying, okay, we no longer have anybody else to blame but ourselves.
He's gone.
He is gone. We will now blame ourselves. Let's start our own errors. We missed that opportunity.
Why? Why?
Yeah. A lot of emotions took over. People wanted to I can't say exactly what happened, where things went off rail. But one thing that I know, which is a fact, is that I was taken out of the role and I was later on unfairly accused of working for ED. I was unfairly accused of trying to work against the wishes of RG. People forgot one thing. All those who were making those accusations forgot one thing. I sat for 4 hours on the 25th of February, 2019, with RG on my side for 4 hours at his last birthday function. And we exchanged a lot on that particular day. It is also the day that he spoke from the heart to all those who were gathered, to his people, about the role that Gideon Gono had played in his life, about how I had served him, both SERVED and SAVED. And he did that several times to everyone's attention and said, Vagono, murisawira vangu imi, sawira wangu wepadyo. Yeah. So I knew a few other things that were contrary to what people were actually advocating and saying. That was the... Yeah.
The problem, Gideon, is that...
So I was taken out.
You're taken out.
Completely.
What I'm trying to say is that... so this is a deal that you tried, but it didn't work. It's one of those that didn't work.
I did not succeed.
And am I right, Gideon? My reading is that from this particular one and where we are right now, nation building has never been a priority to a lot of people. It's about what do I get? The long term has never been a priority to a lot of people. It's about what does Trevor get rather than how do we build a nation? Because you're right, that's an opportunity where we could have pressed the reset button.
The reset button.
But we didn't. And we have missed so many of these opportunities. And for me, the thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, we have never prioritized national issues beyond personal issues. What is Gideon Gono going to get out of this becomes much more important than what is Zimbabwe going to get out of this. Am I correct?
You actually hit the nail on the head. And this I say from a point of pain, a point of anguish, in terms of the kind of challenges, the kind of pain that this nation and this country is going through. Some of it is avoidable. If only we can ask those who may be in the know. The number of times I meet people on the road, the roadblocks, and anyway, they ask me, but Governor, you mean honestly, you can't also assist?
So you have Governor Gideon Gono, you have suggested that in a recent interview that let's approach President Paul Kagame to be the honest peace broker. I don't know if peace broking is the right thing, although I do believe that we're a nation that is at war with itself. We need dialogue. We need to talk to each other. This, where we are, is a space where an election is not going to solve what we're going through right now. So you've made that suggestion. Talk to me about what made you make that suggestion that Paul Kagame should be President Paul Kagame should be the one that is approached. Point number one. Point number two, have you had any responses from anybody?
Well, I made that. If you'll agree with me that I've been quiet.
Sure.
I only speak when it's
necessary. I was surprised when you made that statement.
I looked at a number of factors. We are a nation in crisis. Let's not deny that. Okay? We can only deny that in our own private spaces.
It's dishonest if we deny it.
It would be intellectual dishonesty to deny that. I'm an economist. I have read one or two books in terms of turnarounds. I know exactly the signals and signs of a company that is in difficulties, nations that are in difficulties. Like I said, I enjoy biographies, not just of individuals, but of nations. I can tell you a thing or two about South Korea, how they turned around, about Singapore, about Malaysia, about Germany, about Japan, about the United States of America.
So you've seen the need
I've
for
seen the
Paul
need.
Kagame to
I've seen the need for us to get help.
Okay.
I have also reconciled with myself why it should be an outsider.
Okay.
Because prophets have no honor in their own backyard. Number three, I've also recognized the potential compromises that could be perceived or in reality happen with anyone in SADC coming to help us. Let me touch on South Africa. South Africa's GDP is, or rather Zimbabwe's GDP as of 2019 is 5% of South Africa's economy. 5%. We are insignificant in the scheme of things about when it comes to reality. Right, number one. Number two, in terms of size, Zimbabwe's geographical size is just around 20% of South Africa's size. Number 3, when we look at the contribution, the makeup of the GDP of South Africa and ourselves, we can fool ourselves and think that South Africa has got tremendous interests that go right to the bone with us. Let's calm down. Let's look for our league. Yeah. So within SADC, I said we've had already former GNU brokered by South Africa, but not everyone was happy. Right. So why repeat the same thing? Number 2, I also looked at the nature of the challenges we are facing. We need healing. We need to find each other, talk to each other. There is deep-rooted anguish in we need our economy to turn around. We need international goodwill. We need to bring in investment into the country. We need a clean country, smart. We need consistent policies, and we need everything that is promotive of good law and order, and we need discipline. Now, what is it that is common between us and Rwanda? Before we even talk about the personalities of President Paul Kagame. Rwanda's journey to where it is now has been the most painful. Rwanda lost 800,000 of its citizens to mindless, pointless, and a very painful genocide. Right? It was, none of us has gone through that. Who better to understand the pain than a country that has gone through that? Given a choice between who is going to lead me to a destination, somebody who is in theory and somebody who has walked the journey, I'll choose somebody who has walked the journey.
So President Paul Kagame fits
not only that, there are also other things that bind us. Rwanda is an example of an economy that's ticking. We may look down upon them and say they are a small country, but you know what? From where they are coming, an average of 8% consistent, sustained growth, you can't laugh that out. Yeah. Number 3 or 4, Paul Kagame comes from a military background. What does that say? It talks about discipline in himself as an individual. Paul Kagame led the Rwanda Patriotic Front, RPF. Now, we have got ZANU-PF, ZANU Patriotic Front. We also have got their ideology is founded on the Big Tent. Big Tent, which is an ideology of the MDC. I've lost count which MDC, but of MDC. MT talked about the Big Tent, talked about accommodating one another, views and so forth. So to that end, they embrace both nationalism and populism. They embrace discipline as a party. No wonder we are copying them on a number of other issues. No wonder there is investment that's going there. There is guided democracy along the lines of Lee Kuan-yew of Singapore, General Park of South Korea, and so forth. Himself as an individual, he comes across, I've never met him as an individual, he comes across as a very sincere person. He will not be, he is not part of SADC, right? So he comes across as a very sincere person with principles grounded on peace, reconciliation, healing, and nation building. And is far away from the day-to-day politics of border crossing and so forth that we fight
with South Africa and
Botswana and so forth. So it is in the context of that that one was looking for that. I would have, and of course, I didn't say him alone, supported by Kenya's Raila and Kenyatta. Those are examples of people who have found each other. And up north, West Africa, supported also by Ghana. Ghana is the fastest economy in Africa right now. Yes. And the likes of Jerry Rawlings and the other presidents who came after him would make a good collection of people who would then go to SADC and say, shall we help you as neutral people, far away from the scene of accident? And after all, once we have done this, we'll bring it back to SADC. Okay. So they become envoys of AU. Yeah.
Have you had any encouraging responses at all?
It is tricky to say that.
Okay.
Yes, there's been tremendous interest from that side. But they seek engagement. And it is in the context of that that I've said, I cannot engage you formally, lest I be crossing the line. Yes. You need first, if you are going to seek forgiveness from God, you need to accept that you have sinned. If you are going to heal each other, you need to accept that you have wronged each other. At this stage, we are in denial. So in what capacity would I be seen? If I am to be seen going to them and talking to anyone there, and I am told, you have exceeded, what are you trying to do? You are interfering. I don't want to go to Chikurubi.
Sorry, I'm laughing, but it's a sad state of who we've become. The bottom line is we desperately need help.
We need help.
We agreed.
Yes.
Secondly, where we are, an election is not going to sort out our problems. We agreed on that.
On election, one of the realities we must accept as a nation is that even if MDC was to get 100% votes, it cannot run this country on its own. Never. The same with ZANU-PF. It cannot run this country on its own.
We all need each other.
One has got a constituency which is rural based. The other is a constituency which is urban. On ideological basis, on what? We need each other for a while.
Absolutely.
While we cool down.
Wow. This has just been hectic. Hectic, hurting in so many respects, because it focuses on the things that are painful, the things that have not been resolved. I am hoping and praying that you do get some traction, and that we will have you on in conversation with Trevor to discuss the progress that you'll have made in finding a solution to the crisis that we face right now, and praying that President Paul Kagame is receptive to the idea, and that MDC and ZANU-PF, we all need each other to build this country. Gideon, we can be here the whole day. Let me take you to the books that you have read that have left an indelible mark on you. Just 3 books that you want to share with us.
I pride myself in having one of the biggest libraries in this country, and one day I would like to invite you to come and see. So I've read several books, too numerous to mention, but my focus is mainly on biographies of individuals and countries. Right now, perhaps is more important. I'm reading 3 books. One is entitled "Where Have the Leaders Gone?" by Leah Coker. He is actually questioning where the leaders of America have gone. When you read his book, "Where Have the Leaders Gone To?" you can't help but just shift in your chair, because
it speaks to where we are.
That's number one. I would encourage anybody to read that.
Okay, that's the first one?
That's the first one I'm reading currently. The other one that I'm reading is is one entitled Corporate Christ. Okay. Corporate Christ is a book I am reading for the 15th time.
And you brought me a copy.
I brought you a copy. Corporate Christ it's not a biblical book as such, but it tries to draw lessons that our Lord Jesus Christ used to create a phenomena which 2,000 years down the road, it is still a phenomena which is growing. And it recognizes our Lord Jesus Christ as the greatest strategist of all times. We can fool ourselves and think that we are great marketers. We are great strategic planners, short, long term, and medium. We are great human resource managers. No, the greatest HR person was our Lord Jesus Christ. Look at the manner in which he went recruiting his 12 disciples. Look at the manner in which he managed their diverse backgrounds. Look at the manner in which he was the greatest salesperson, a marketer, how he went about getting his message across. And today it is a phenomena. It is a book that I would recommend to anybody.
For bringing
and the last but not least, the third one that I'm reading at the moment is a book entitled Silent No More.
And you brought me a copy again.
I brought you a copy. It's actually, I had 2 copies. That one is yours. And it says here, it says, our times demand it. Our history compels it. Our future requires it. And God is watching.
Wow. Gideon, wow. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having
me. Thank you for the books. Thank you for the time you've set aside for this conversation. In depth, candid.
Thank you.
I wish we had more time, but I am looking forward to the 2 books that you're writing, because I have a suspicion that some of the stuff that we touched on are going to be the subjects of the books that you are writing. Naturally, a man who's served in the positions that you have served for so long is bound to be a controversial character. And I think with all of us, none of us has a sheet where, what do you call in business, the assets and liabilities?
Yes.
We all have assets and liabilities. And the more you are in the public, in the limelight, the more you have public role like you had, you'll have your enemies. You'll have people that are out to knife you. Thank you for finding the time to share your journey. It's a journey that is inspirational in many respects. I love the fact that you've lost weight.
I'm still the best tea maker there. Should you need, I mean, I'm unemployed.
Right.
Please, anyone who needs a tea
good
maker,
tea.
I will.
Gideon, we wish you all the best. Thank you for serving the nation. Allow me now to tend to our viewers in Zimbabwe, all over the continent, in the diaspora who watch this show on a weekly basis. We thank you for your support. The show is growing phenomenally. The numbers are quite impressive. We thank you. We've just celebrated our first anniversary. We thank you for your support. To ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations that we have on a weekly basis, please press this subscribe button and you get a notification every time we have one of these quality conversations. So until next time, thank you for your support and cheers to you all.